Every year, Americans spend over $500 billion on prescription medications. And somewhere in that same window of time, a researcher published a study confirming that a specific herb, one that has been growing wild along roadsides for 4,000 years, outperformed a common pharmaceutical in a head-to-head clinical trial. Those two things are happening simultaneously. Most people only ever hear about the first one. Today, we are going to fix that. The plants on this list are not fringe remedies or folk superstition dressed up as science. They are subjects of serious peer-reviewed, randomized clinical research. Real trials. Real outcomes. Real mechanisms traced down to the molecular level and confirmed. Stay with me through the entire list. Because number 6 has a clinical track record against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, the kind hospitals are genuinely afraid of, and it is sitting in your kitchen right now. And number 2 has been proven in controlled trials to outperform pharmaceutical anti-nausea drugs in some of the most demanding medical contexts imaginable. Chemotherapy patients. Surgical wards. Pregnant women. Same plant. Performed better. 10 herbs. Let us get into every one of them. Number 10. Lavender. The purple field that was always a pharmacy. Most people have filed lavender under pleasant. A candle scent. A soap fragrance. What most people have never been told is that lavender has a body of rigorous clinical research behind it that has forced more than one country's medical establishment to pay attention. Lavandula angustifolia has been used for over 2,000 years across Mediterranean cultures for anxiety, sleeplessness, and nervous tension. For most of modern history, medicine dismissed all of that as pleasant-smelling coincidence. Then the controlled trials arrived. A standardized oral lavender oil preparation has now been tested in multiple randomized controlled trials for generalized anxiety disorder. The results showed reductions in anxiety that were, in some of those studies, statistically comparable to pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medications. Without the dependency. Without the withdrawal. The research is solid enough that this preparation is now officially approved as an anxiety treatment in several European countries. Inhaled lavender also has measurable effects. Studies confirm it lowers cortisol levels and improves sleep quality not just in subjective reports, but in physiological markers. Lavender became so commercially successful as a fragrance that its medicinal identity got buried. But for anxiety, tension headaches, and poor sleep, those purple fields were never just decoration. Number 9. Chamomile. The bedtime tea that was never just comfort. Here is where most people make a mistake. They assume chamomile is mild. That it works the way warm water works. Gentle, mostly psychological. That assumption is biochemically wrong. Matricaria chamomilla contains a compound called apigenin. And apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain. These are the same receptors targeted by pharmaceutical anti-anxiety drugs like diazepam. Chamomile does not create a cozy feeling through association. It works through a documented neurological mechanism. Clinical trials have confirmed this directly. A randomized controlled study found significant reductions in generalized anxiety disorder symptoms in participants taking chamomile extract compared to placebo. A follow-up study found that sustained chamomile use reduced the rate of anxiety relapse. For sleep, it has been shown to reduce time to sleep onset and improve overall sleep quality, particularly in elderly populations and new mothers, two groups where pharmaceutical sleep aids carry serious risks. 2,000 years of herbalists reaching for those small white flowers were working with a real pharmacological mechanism. They just could not name the receptor. Number 8. Rosemary. The kitchen herb your brain has been waiting for. Greek students wore rosemary garlands while studying for examinations. The phrase rosemary for remembrance appears in Shakespeare not as invention, but as cultural reference. The association was already ancient by the time he wrote it down. For most of recorded history, that connection between rosemary and mental clarity was treated as poetic. It turns out it was an observation. Studies have demonstrated that simply being in a room diffused with rosemary aroma produces measurable improvements in speed and accuracy on cognitive tasks. The primary compound responsible is 1,8-cineol, found in rosemary essential oil, which crosses the blood-brain barrier and inhibits an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, a key neurotransmitter involved in memory and learning. That is a real pharmacological mechanism, not a placebo. Rosemary also carries documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Rosmarinic acid, one of its primary active compounds, has been studied for protective effects on cells under oxidative stress. Traditional preparations used rosemary tea for headaches and circulatory support. Today it mostly sits between the other spice jars. The brain support was always there. Number 7. Echinacea. 300 clinical studies, growing in gardens everywhere. The purple coneflower that blooms across North American prairies and roadsides was the central healing plant of the Plains tribes, used for infections, wounds, fever, and immune stress. When European settlers encountered it, it became one of the most widely prescribed plants in 19th century American medicine. Then synthetic antibiotics arrived. Echinacea got dismissed as unscientific folk medicine and spent most of the 20th century quietly ignored. The research that followed has steadily rebuilt its reputation. Meta-analyses pooling results from multiple randomized controlled trials have confirmed that echinacea preparations reduce both the likelihood of developing upper respiratory infections and the duration and severity of illness when infections do occur. The active compounds, primarily alkylamides and polysaccharides, interact directly with immune cells through documented mechanisms. A quality echinacea preparation produces a distinctive tingling sensation on your tongue from those alkylamides. If you take an echinacea product and feel nothing, the compounds have likely degraded. Taken at the very first sign of illness and continued consistently, it shortens recovery for most people who use it. 300 published clinical studies. Thousands of years of indigenous use. Still doing exactly what it has always done. Number 6. Garlic. The most studied natural antimicrobial on Earth. When garlic is crushed or chopped, specifically crushed or chopped, not left whole, an enzyme called alliinase reacts with a compound called alliin and produces allicin within seconds. Allicin is one of the broadest spectrum natural antimicrobials ever identified in clinical science. It demonstrates activity against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites simultaneously. It does not target one pathogen through one pathway. It disrupts multiple biological mechanisms at once. This is why microbial resistance to allicin is so difficult to develop. Studies have confirmed activity against antibiotic-resistant strains, including MRSA. That is a finding the hospital infection community takes seriously. For cardiovascular health, meta-analyses confirm that regular garlic supplementation produces meaningful reductions in blood pressure in people with hypertension, measurable reductions in LDL cholesterol, and improvements in arterial stiffness. A landmark randomized controlled trial found that people taking a daily garlic supplement had significantly fewer colds over a winter period and recovered faster when they did get sick. The critical detail is temperature. Allicin is volatile. Heat denatures it rapidly. Raw, freshly crushed garlic is a fundamentally different medicine than the same garlic cooked for 20 minutes. Let crushed garlic sit for 10 minutes before applying any heat. The enzymatic reaction needs time to complete. If this list is already changing how you look at your kitchen, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Every week on this channel, we bring you evidence-backed knowledge that cuts through the noise. The next video goes even deeper, and you do not want to miss it. Number 5. Turmeric. The golden root pharmaceutical companies are spending billions trying to replicate. Curcuma longa has been a cornerstone of Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine for over 4,000 years. It is currently one of the most intensely studied plants in modern biomedical research, with thousands of published papers examining curcumin, its primary active compound, and why major pharmaceutical companies cannot stop chasing it. The reason they are chasing it is chronic inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now understood to be the underlying driver of most major modern diseases: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, certain cancers, arthritis. Curcumin inhibits multiple molecular pathways involved in this inflammatory process simultaneously. Clinical trials have shown improvements in arthritis symptoms comparable to pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory drugs, and measurable improvements in cardiovascular markers. Research also indicates curcumin may influence proteins tied to cellular stress resistance, the same pathways activated during caloric restriction, one of the most consistently observed life-extending interventions in biological science. The traditional preparation of turmeric with warm milk and black pepper is pharmacologically sophisticated. Piperine in black pepper increases curcumin's bioavailability by up to 2,000%. People figured that combination out thousands of years before anyone understood the mechanism. Number 4. Elderberry. The berry that shortened influenza by 4 days. Before antiviral prescriptions existed, elderberry syrup was standard. Sambucus nigra, the dark purple berry of the elder tree, was used across Europe as the first response to colds and flu for as long as written records exist. Then pharmaceutical alternatives arrived, and elderberry got quietly shelved as old-fashioned. Here is what the clinical research actually shows. Multiple randomized controlled trials have confirmed that elderberry extract significantly reduces both the duration and severity of influenza. One widely cited study found that flu patients taking elderberry recovered an average of 4 days sooner than those on placebo. A meta-analysis pooling results across multiple independent trials confirmed meaningful reductions in both duration and symptom severity. 4 days. That is not a marginal improvement. The anthocyanins in elderberry appear to interfere with a virus's ability to replicate while simultaneously activating immune defenses. That dual action explains the magnitude of the effect. Elderberry did not get pushed aside because it stopped working. It got pushed aside because no one can patent a berry growing in the hedgerow. Number 3. Peppermint. Pain, digestion, and congestion simultaneously. Mentha piperita contains menthol as its primary active compound. For tension headaches, multiple controlled trials have shown that peppermint oil applied to the forehead and temples produces pain relief equivalent to acetaminophen. That result consistently surprises people who did not expect a plant to match a pharmaceutical painkiller in a controlled setting. The same cooling mechanism that makes it feel refreshing is producing measurable, quantifiable headache relief. For irritable bowel syndrome, enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules are now widely acknowledged in gastroenterology as one of the most effective available treatments. Multiple meta-analyses support this. The menthol relaxes smooth muscle in the gut, reducing cramping and spasms. Several clinical guidelines now list peppermint oil as a recommended first-line treatment for IBS. For congestion, menthol is a clinically validated decongestant, opening airways by stimulating cold receptors and reducing nasal resistance. 3 distinct medical functions. 1 plant. Most people walk past it every day reaching for something else. Number 2. Ginger. The root that outperformed anti-nausea drugs in clinical trials. Ginger has been used as medicine for over 5,000 years. It appears in ancient Chinese medical texts, Ayurvedic tradition, Greek medical writing, medieval European herbalism. It is one of the most consistently used medicinal plants in human history across more separate cultures than almost any other plant on this list. Modern pharmacology has not just validated it. It has been stunned by it. Zingiber officinale contains gingerols and shogales, compounds with documented anti-nausea, anti-inflammatory, and analgesic effects. Multiple randomized controlled trials have found that ginger is as effective as pharmaceutical anti-nausea medications for chemotherapy-induced nausea, post-surgical nausea, and pregnancy-related morning sickness. In some of those trials, Ginger performed better than the pharmaceutical option, with fewer side effects. A root you can buy at any grocery store on earth for roughly $1, outperforming a pharmaceutical drug in some of the most demanding medical contexts imaginable. For pain, research shows ginger extract produces significant improvements in osteoarthritis pain and post-exercise muscle soreness. 5,000 years of consistent use across disconnected civilizations, and the trials keep confirming what every one of those cultures independently figured out. Number 1. Oregano. The kitchen herb with the antimicrobial profile researchers did not expect. Origanum vulgar is what most people reach for when making pasta sauce. The conversation stops there. It should not. The primary active compounds in oregano, carvacrol and thymol, have produced results in clinical and laboratory research that have forced a serious reconsideration of what this plant actually is. Carvacrol has demonstrated broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, and Staphylococcus aureus. Research has found meaningful activity against Candida, the fungal species behind a range of conditions increasingly resistant to standard pharmaceutical antifungals. Most significantly, multiple studies have found carvacrol active against antibiotic-resistant bacterial strains. The mechanism involves disruption of bacterial cell membranes, interference with biofilm formation, and inhibition of bacterial enzymes across multiple pathways simultaneously. This multipathway action makes resistance significantly harder to develop, which is precisely why researchers are paying close attention. Beyond antimicrobial effects, oregano contains rosmarinic acid and a range of antioxidant polyphenols studied for anti-inflammatory effects and protection of gastrointestinal lining integrity. The plant earning the top position on this list is not an obscure root from a remote rainforest. It is not a compound that requires pharmaceutical extraction to access. It is sitting in your spice drawer right now. 10 herbs. A combined body of clinical research running to thousands of published studies, and the same conclusion arriving from every direction. The most powerful tools for human health are not always the ones dispensed from a pharmacy. Sometimes they are the things that have been growing quietly in every garden and every kitchen for thousands of years, waiting for science to catch up to what sustained human observation had already figured out. Before you close this video, pick 3 herbs from this list. Whichever 3 feel most relevant to your life right now. Source the highest quality version you can find. Use them consistently for 30 days, the way the ancient world used them. As food. As medicine. The way they were always intended. Pay attention to what happens. The ancient world paid attention. That is how they built the knowledge we are still confirming. If this changed how you look at what is already in your kitchen, drop a comment right now and tell me which herb surprised you most. Was it peppermint matching acetaminophen in clinical trials? Garlic showing activity against antibiotic-resistant bacteria? Elderberry cutting flu by 4 days? I read every single comment on this channel. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button now and turn on the notification bell. We post new videos every week covering evidence-backed knowledge the mainstream conversation consistently overlooks. Real mechanisms. Real research. Real things you can actually use. The medicine has always been right there. Now you know what you were looking at.